everyone. Happy Friday. Hopefully, you're having a nice end of the week and you're ready to start a nice weekend. It is Seeking Sustainability Live number 35, and we have a very special guest, Mac Salman of Mactopia. I want to say Mactopia, Maction Planet. I've just renamed your company. I'm sorry about that.
Not a problem at all.
Mac, you want to introduce yourself? Thanks so much for joining.
Absolute pleasure, Joy. It's a real honor to be amongst the the infamous cast of the last 35 SSLs. So by way of introduction, my name's Mac. I've lived in Japan, in Tokyo, for the last 14 years. And in terms of kind of the tourism aspect of life, I've been guiding for the last 10 years, but about 3 years ago, I decided to set up my own company called Maction Planet. You went for the French pronunciation, Maction, which sounds much more sophisticated.
That's very kind of you.
So yeah, and prior to that, I was in finance for the first year in Japan in insurance, and then after that in investment banking.
Wow.
And so Maction Planet was set up 3 years ago. Initially kind of guiding just me in Tokyo, and luckily things went well, so that grew beyond Tokyo, and then luckily things went well, so I now work with a number of guides both in Tokyo and around the country to deliver bespoke tours and experiences to our wonderful guests, some of whom I know are watching right now. So if you are, hello.
Great. Yeah. Thank you so much for everybody. It looks like we have some viewers on Twitch and Periscope and YouTube and Facebook. So thank you so much for joining. Please make sure to write your comments and questions below. We're going to go through some photos from Mac's different social media platforms. You're pretty much everywhere. I'm very impressed. You have content and information in a lot of places, but maybe the main place for people to go and then find other routes would be your website, right?
Yeah, very good. I'm really glad you've said that, actually, Joy, because that's what I want initially. So, my relationship with social media has been interesting. Having read some of the stuff that you've written as well, I can see you're also a fan of infamous content man Gary Vaynerchuk, and who I only found out about actually a few months ago. When I started the business, I had no idea. I was just sort of operating in the dark. But I thought, well, you've got to make yourself look like a company. Fake it till you make it, as it were.
Exactly. So, yes. One of my favorite things that he says. No, go ahead. Yeah.
Well, because in the act, and this I think applies to a lot of things in life, right? In the act of actually doing, and sort of pretending, then you become that thing that you may want to become. I mean, from a physiological perspective, right? If you're not feeling very good about yourself and you force yourself to smile, then you will naturally gravitate towards that state. So, that's the micro level, and you can definitely apply it at the macro level. So in terms of social media, initially I would put a lot on social media. But one thing that's always been at the back of my mind for the last 2.5 years is that you don't own the platforms that the social media is on.
Yeah.
And
what do they say if it's free? That doesn't necessarily mean it's free. That means they're using your content to benefit them, but it doesn't necessarily benefit you. I think that's something I always struggle with, putting content out. Where do you put it out? So like you said, on your website, that's your platform. That's maybe your only true platform, right?
That's the only thing that you own. Yeah, I mean, and you can say, well, even Google drives traffic to it. Well, irrespective of that, you own this little bit of space online. And for the first maybe 6 months, I think, of what I did, the tail wagged the dog, meaning that I would put out an Instagram post, in isolation of anything on the website. And then I just started begrudging that. And so, more and more now, everything that is on the social media kind of links back to, a review of a art exhibition or a introduction of a new tour option that we're doing. So
I think a lot of people are struggling with this, Mac. I was talking to Paul Martin on Wednesday, and he was saying the same thing. Like, he really wants to grow his YouTube. He's an amazing expert in Japanese swords, but he found that his content on Facebook was getting thousands and thousands of views, but it wasn't translating into more business for him. Or it was, but he's found on YouTube, by contrast, does translate into people contacting him or something. So I think for every one of our genres, you have to find what social media links back to business or links back to support for what you're doing, because otherwise you're just giving it away. And it's kind of, like you said, if you can feed it back to where it actually pays off, that makes a lot of sense, right? Mac, did I lose you?
Yeah. Okay. You're completely right. By the way, hello to Paul. I really enjoyed that chat to him. And I've been very lucky to actually work with him in terms of some really, really special, sword-related experiences. So, he's somebody who should have a much bigger platform than he does. And it's great to see some of the things that he's been doing. I see he started to become a bit more active on LinkedIn now and bringing some of that YouTube content to there. But you never know what platform is going to work for you, right? And so sometimes you've just got to scattergun approach.
Yeah. Well, plus
me,
I'm sure
still worked a bit.
Yeah, I'm sure you notice as well. No, it's fine. I'm sure you notice as well. Facebook loves it when you do content for Facebook. Instagram loves it when you do content for Instagram, right? Those platforms are very clever, and they do not like it when you share the same information on multiple platforms, So you have people who have real strength in Instagram, right? But not in other platforms. Or you have people who are very strong on Twitter, but not other platforms, right? Yeah. Like, what would you say your strength platform is? Where are you doing well?
Sure, I think it's
Instagram.
I mean, if you measured it by followers, then I guess Instagram would be one and YouTube would be the other. And YouTube has been an interesting one for me. Initially, I would put out a few videos here and there, quite short things, but things really started to take off when the Rugby World Cup hit. That amazing tournament. Every time I think about it, it makes me very sad because I start thinking about the Olympics.
Yeah.
And how we're not going to have that nice double whammy.
I know.
Anyway.
Right? But I'm so glad that you've got these amazing videos, that you really made the most of the rugby experience, because nobody knew then that was going to be it for the next few years. I mean, you didn't know, right? But now you have really got all this great content from that, probably the biggest time for tourism in Japan for many years. I mean, whether the Olympics can even really happen next year, we don't really know yet, So it's you did well, and you didn't know. You just went with what you could at the time, and it really paid off. So great. We have some comments already. Winnie on Facebook says, great tour guide, really fun and interesting guy, and made our Japanese trip so much fun. Thank you, Winnie. And
brilliant. Thank you, Winnie.
And Matt on YouTube says, top man, really enjoyed the rugby videos and experience of meeting you at the games. Awesome, Matt. Thank you so much. That's great. And
it was fun, actually. Oh, sorry. Just on that note,
go ahead.
I started making these videos. I just decided that this was going to be when I I learned how to edit, jumped on initially Adobe Rush and then upgraded to Premiere Pro. And, I wanted it as a skill. And I just thought, okay, this tournament and making some kind of vlog of the games I went to. And then I put one up, and the first one got something like 50,000 views in the first 3 days. And I thought, oh, gosh, OK, there's something here. People want to see this content. And yeah, and as a result, then people started recognizing me at games. So I was able to interact with fans. And as you know now, with what you've done with SSL, you know, building that community is it gives you a real kick, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. And I was listening to, well, watching some of your videos today, and you've got such a great style. Right in the beginning, I was like, I have to do something like that. You have the catchphrase, "This is Mac from Maction Planet," like very simple every time. And you know, those little things, I think it catches on because my whole name, Inbound Ambassador, has been very hard to explain. You know,
Yeah.
like, what are you doing? What? You know, so, and sustainability, really hard to explain. But I think I'm going to adopt your style and say, hey, this is Joy from Inbound Ambassador, you know, and then at least maybe they'll remember Joy, whether they remember my name or not, you know, my company name. Uh, I love your videos, and everything
I
looks
think, you
really
know, one of the
fun.
things, right?
Mm,
You you've hit on something which I've been doing a lot of thinking about. I was interviewed for a podcast recently called Small Business Japan, and you know, there was somebody else who'd been interviewed on that a few episodes beforehand, and he said, if you make a piece of content and you don't have an audience for it, then there was no point in making it. And you know, kind of from an academic and business perspective, I of course respect that, but from my, you know, from my perspective as somebody who enjoys writing like you do, and somebody who just enjoys the act of creating, I thought, well, you know, actually looks at this, it was just kind of fun to make it.
yeah.
So, you know, you've got to be able to have fun with it. If you love the name Inbound Ambassador, then, you know, screw anybody else who thinks it's a bit silly. Listen, now that I know what SEO stands for, maybe I wouldn't have started a Japan guiding business called Maction Planet, which has absolutely no SEO value whatsoever. But, you know, a few months in, when guests were starting to have fun with it, when they would write reviews on TripAdvisor saying, you know, we were Mactioned, or, you know, we've started going on holiday and we use the word Maction to describe a full day of tourism as if it was organized by you, then, you know, you've built that brand, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Apple means computers. It means it's a fruit, for God's sake, you know. And
Exactly.
McDonald's
Exactly.
sounds like a Scottish farmer or
Yeah.
distiller, but here we are, you know.
Exactly. And now that you have a brand, you have become bigger than your brand. You know, so that, you know, choosing an obscure name, well, it means something to me because it means that I'm trying to balance the needs of locals with the needs of visitors. That's why
Yeah,
ambassador and inbound. Why inbound? Because that's what international tourism is called in Japan. And you know,
yeah,
you and I, we have both had a big transition now that tourism has really fallen off. But hopefully, we'll be able to find new ways forward, you know. And I think with your positive energy and with the style of business that you've been doing, where you've been going deep and you've been doing obscure, off the beaten path, people focused travel, you know, that's
yeah,
very sustainable, and not only in terms of better for people, better for planet, but it's sustainable in terms of it's going to be the one to survive because it's not generic, right?
yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about your tours that you've been offering on your website. Really great variety. Ikebana lessons, cooking classes, sumo training, samurai experiences, whiskey tasting, craft beer experiences, shochu sampling. And I love that you have shochu before sake. Sake tastings on the next part of the list, you know. And then I realized, researching your website and everything, that you have great collaborators in the
Yeah.
shochu world and in the craft beer world. And having collaborators, you know, makes all the difference. You want to introduce those tours a bit?
Yeah, yeah, sure. So, you know, the first thing actually is you know, the way the website is structured has these different boxes on it, you know, with sort of, you know, the one's called Iconic Tokyo, one's called Backstreet Tokyo, etc. But for me, what I really want, and, the people who get it make me very happy, is they understand that these are just kind of ideas, what I really, the way it works ideally for me is I get an email saying, Mac, are you available on these days? I reply, yes, I am. Brilliant. We want to book you for 8, 10, 12 hours for, let's say, 3 days. And then I say, what are your interests? And then they say, okay, we're interested in sake. We really love cocktails. We want to do a tea ceremony, but we don't want to go to one of these conveyor belt things in Kyoto. And I assemble this list, architecture, whatever it may be. And then really I adopt this thing which I call trust the DJ, which is where you then just turn up, like I meet you at 9 a.m. in the Peninsula Hotel lobby, and, hopefully with the nice things that people have written on online, a trust has developed, and you can just relax and be exposed to, this amazing city and this amazing country.
Yeah.
So that's kind of how it works. But
we've got a great comment. Let me fit it in right to what you're saying. Claire writes on Facebook, Mac is such a great tour guide. He jumped ship from big corporations, and I think he should write a book about his experiences of making his own business and promoting other small businesses. Collaboration is key. Spread the message, Mac. Yeah, I agree 100%. And if I heard you say in the podcast with small businesses that you don't feel like you have a competitive feeling with other travel agents and stuff, that you really want to collaborate. And that is something I say to businesses and destinations all the time. Like, if you have a hotel in an area and you can suggest other restaurants, other places nearby, please do so, because it helps you. It helps everybody, Yeah.
You're completely right. Unfortunately, we are living through a once in a century global pandemic. But last year, I think we had 31.8 million visitors to this country. And the year before that, we had 31.1 million, I'm overjoyed. Last year I was booked on average 6 days a week, and the other guys who I work with also had a few bookings a week. But that is such a small percentage of the pie that there really is, enough for everybody to do, whatever it is, whether it's guiding, whether it's hotels, whether it's experiences, whether it's what you're doing in your liaison work. So, anybody who is, there's nothing wrong with competition as a motivator, but somebody who's actively competitive at the expense of others, who's not collaborative.
Yeah.
You're just sowing bad karma into the world.
Yeah. So I appreciate you coming on this series and giving us your insights. And I'm so impressed when I reach out to loads of people in different kinds of work, and most of them say yes. It's such a new thing, but it's that willingness to share your insights and help other people along the way, that it really, it's a great part of your brand, right?
Yeah. Well, like our mutual friend, Mr. Vaynerchuk says, it's, something actually hit home to me a few months ago on one of his weekly V episodes, where he said something like, sorry, it was in my head. Give me 1 second.
Sorry.
Oh, the very little, as a business, very little that you do is really proprietary. I've got my knowledge. The only thing that's really proprietary about me is kind of my, me, like my personality and my knowledge. If people really want to disintermediate, they can, but of course they're going to be spending a lot of time doing that, and they probably can't do it as well as they could if they just outsourced the task to somebody else. So there's just collaboration is the name of the game, and the collaborators I have: Chris Pellegrini on Shochu, Yayu Wang on photography, New Media Eye in video production. Unbelievable people, unbelievable organizations. So
I would
really,
say I was doing consulting and training, guide training. So Japanese guides who were trained as Japanese guides. So they've been through that really difficult test, but then they
yeah,
wanted to guide international people, and they knew that they needed to transition, that it wasn't the same as guiding Japanese people. And my advice always was, what do you like about this place? How do you tell your story, not just the facts and figures and names and everything? And I get that impression from all of your tours and your information. I love how you are so flexible. And that is one of the key things that I always tell people. You have to be flexible. You know, if you go somewhere and they want to eat pancakes, one of your reviews was, one of your kids on the tour, they wanted to eat pancakes for lunch, and you found a great pancake place. You're in Japan, but you want to eat what you want to eat, especially when you're a kid, right? You've got
yeah.
kakigori and you've got Jomon art statues. You know, I mean, you take people to the places that will connect with them about what's gonna be meaningful to them, or make it enjoyable for them, you know. And so yeah, you're doing a great job. I love that kakigori dog head picture and the Jomon. We visited the
Oh,
Jomon.
The Shirokuma, the polar bear, right?
Yeah,
So that's
yeah.
the kakikori variant that originated in Kyushu. And actually, that photo is from a shop called Uka, Ouca. May it rest in peace. Couldn't be with us tonight. It was in Ebisu, and unfortunately, it shut down.
Oh no.
I know, very upset, but that's it. You know, that's also part of the game, that you have to keep up with all the latest trends and all the latest shops. And
Yeah.
you know, I have a big tax deductible research budget of eating kakikori and drinking beer and a lot of other things as well. But, you know, I think you've hit upon one thing which has been interesting watching the conversations you've had with people, which is, you know, we've had this trend. Yeah, everybody talks about going niche, you know. Oh, you know, I found my niche. I found my niche. I found my niche. And this was something that bugged me, because kind of I didn't have a niche. You know, I love art, and I'm not, you know, I'm not the world's greatest art expert, but, you know, I know a decent amount about art for people like Claire, for example, who just wrote in, who's a fantastic artist herself, to, you know, to share some great experiences at the Watarium over some Gilbert and George, you know. I don't know anywhere near as much as Chris Pellegrini or Stephen Lyman about shochu, but thanks to their teaching, you know, I can certainly talk a good game. So I kept thinking, well, what's the niche? And, you know, I kind of thought, well, my niche is actually that I love it all. So, you know, yes, you know, you can connect the, you know, some of the stories that you end up telling, you must have this experience as well, when you talk about Japan and how this mascot is composed of, you know, a cross between a bowl of udon and Tokugawa, you know, Iemitsu, the third shogun, because the local food is this, and, you know, he was born here. I mean, whatever it may be.
Yeah.
If you have some understanding of kind of the bigger picture, then you can bring it all together, and that's something that you know, categorizes everything that I do, is that I don't like the niche. You know, I like the niche to be everything.
Yeah.
Harder work, but well worth it.
No, it's better, because there is no textbook that's going to work for every person who wants a tour. There is no textbook that's going to answer every question people ask you as a consultant, right? So if you have so much experience over the years, and you're just collecting stories and collecting contacts, and you have people who know that answer, and you can put people in touch, that is a skill. You know, being a connector is amazing. Let's talk a little bit about your craft beer stuff. You have a great craft beer tour.
Yeah. It's you know, craft beer's really grown in the last decade in Japan. We've got a number of amazing bars, and I'm very lucky to have great relationships with a lot of them. So, you know, we're able to do a few interesting things, take people into, you know, the back, introduce them to the bar managers, take them directly to some breweries that don't actually offer tours, but I mean, as you know, right, you just hinted at it. Japan is very much a relationship country. And so if you take the time, and it does take time to really build that respect, then the payoff is great. And then, my goal is to then pass that payoff to other people. But anyway, the craft beer, craft beer in Japan is really interesting because it's so much of the history of beer over the last 100 years has been driven by the tax laws here. So a law was passed in the early 1900s that meant that you could basically, in order to make beer, you had to have distribution over 1,000 kiloliters a year. And that's actually a pretty big number. In 1994, that was cut to 60 kiloliters, which is still a big number, but at least it allowed some smaller companies to start to enter the market that was previously dominated by Kirin, Sapporo, Suntory, and the other one, the most famous one, which I won't mention because, as I like to tell my guests, ABA, anything but Asahi.
It was such a wonderful day when they approved craft beer in Japan. I remember it well. And then, craft beer was already becoming so popular in America, so popular abroad. And, I knew so many young Japanese guys who were so into the idea. They'd been to Seattle, they'd been to Portland, they've been to all these places where they have great craft beer, and they wanted to start their own. So I think we have a pretty good craft beer culture now. And of course, craft beer is a lot more sustainable. It's made by smaller groups of people. One of my favorite, I don't know if you've been near Tokyo Tower, is Kamikatsu's beer, right? And that's the zero waste town. So even all the beer that they make, they're using residue from fruit from the local industry that's been wasted. They're reusing everything. You can bring your own container. You can fill up your own container there. They encourage it, reusing.
Yeah, exactly. I love that. Those things, sometimes you see them, and that regardless, I think one of the problems, sometimes people get too head up on how the message is said and not the message itself,
Yeah.
I don't care what drives you. If you're helping people reuse containers, I don't care if it's to save you money or because, you love the environment. Ideally both, because it's a win-win.
Yeah.
So it's good to see those things, and they're much easier to do at the smaller scale.
And it's a lot easier that it tastes great too. It's very high quality. It's like the early days of fair trade coffee. It was, something you want to support, but it just didn't taste good. So now if you can do sustainable and high quality, awesome. Great stuff.
Yeah, so I mean, obviously Tokyo is now at the forefront of global third wave coffee culture, which is absolutely fantastic as well. One thing I love, just to touch on what you said about craft beer as well, is again, this involves a huge tax deductible beer research budget as well. Is there's a lot of beers out there that are made that are uniquely Japanese. That are made with mikan, for example, say Baird beers. Mikan, summer ale, right? Or made with real matcha or hojicha. So, that's something I like as well. Everything that I can do to elevate, somebody's experience. I mean, anybody can Google top 10, craft beer bars in Tokyo and go and have a great time in them. But, you want to do something more than that. So, the addition of the personal relationships, the genuine beer knowledge, and taking them to the real top 10 places that are not on, the internet's top 10 list is key.
Yeah, definitely. And the whole idea of introducing shochu, not just sake, because shochu, that was so interesting talking to Stephen Lyman the other day. And he was saying 80% of, or even higher, of all shochu that's made in Japan stays in Japan. Like, it is just not exported. So people have never had the chance to try it. And it's so good. And very sustainable, supports local agriculture, So I'm really happy to see that you've got some great collaborators promoting shochu as well.
Yeah, well, Stephen and Chris Pellegrini together must be two of the world's big. I mean, I say of the world's biggest to add some modesty on their behalf, the two biggest, certainly foreign non-Japanese experts on shochu. And it's key, right? But, people are coming here thinking Nihonshu, 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 but no real knowledge that the biggest selling drink in this country is, Japanese original indigenous drink is actually shochu. So yeah, it's key to promote it,
especially if you're down south in Kyushu. Tim says a guide gives you so much more insight. We always look for a good guide. Thank you, Tim. It is. It's true. I think there's so much information online now that a lot of people feel tempted just to do a self-guided tour. But Japan is it's hard to scratch the surface. It's hard to talk to locals. So if you hire a guide, you can just make that deeper connection and hear the stories, but also easier to talk to local people, which, how many visitors do I meet in Japan who say they feel lonely because Japanese people are too polite, that they haven't had a conversation with a local person the whole time they're here. So having a guide gives you that chance to talk to local people because they just know who to talk to and where to go, right?
Yeah, thank you, Tim, for your comment there. It's, one thing from the very start, if you hunt around the website, you might be able to find this comment in the, annals of history. I said, look, Tokyo is the world's greatest metropolis, and just being here makes your life better. I mean, literally just flying in and just, occupying this piece of land will improve your life exponentially. This is without a doubt. I'm very lucky. I've been to 108 countries, and there is not even a close number two in terms of Tokyo. It is unbelievable place, and I'm great. I was happy for people to come here, and I'm happy to help a lot of independent travelers as well. But there is a market. What's interesting is despite all of the information that is out there online, there's still a role for guides. And you touched on some of the aspects earlier on of what it means to be a guide and good guiding. But it reminds me of my former job as an analyst, an equity analyst. I was analyzing Japanese financial companies. And, since the advent of the internet, people have been saying that profession was dead, because initially you acted as a mediator between the companies and the market. And then over time that got disintermediated because, companies published their results straight away. But what they didn't publish, of course, was the analysis on those results. And so, there was a role there, and that role still remains. So it's the same with guiding and acting as a liaison for tourism.
Definitely. What kind of food tours have you found to be most popular? Before we continue, we got another great comment from Facebook. Wee Kwok says, whether it's a baseball game, a sumo match, or out in nature, Mac is large. Smiley face. Thanks for all the wonderful times. Big in Japan.
My favorite word is large.
Is that right?
It was a word I think that was used a lot in the 80s and early 90s in the UK, and I'm trying to keep it going, to the 2090s. So, but to me, large, it just sort of encompasses, larger than life, positivity, many, many different aspects of just the way I try to live life. So, food tours. So this is quite interesting. I do a lot of evening food tours. So I typically say I'll guide during the day, and then I'll have another tour in the evening from say 6:30 till 10:30, and that'll be food mixed in with some drink as well. But that's not my preferred food tour format. That food tour box is there online again because the gods of Google demand search engine optimization, and so I need something to come up if somebody types Tokyo food tours in. I'm not a fan of the 3-hour food tour concept because I always feel like I'm force feeding people as much as possible in such a short amount of time. I mean, if you've had one bowl of ramen, no normal human being wants to eat too much more immediately after that. So what I prefer to do again is to understand that food is an interest. Now, you may think that food is an interest for everybody, given its relative importance to keeping us alive. But, some people are not. Some people are very functional eaters. I get that sometimes in the email, please don't spend 2 hours on some long dinner because we will not appreciate it. We want to see things, right? So what I like to do is to say, okay, food is one of your interests. We're going to spend 10 hours together, and we're going to, start off the day at a great third wave coffee shop, and then we're going to have a snack, and then we're going to have, a lunch, a great whatever it is, whatever you want to do, and then, snack, and then more dinner. And that's what I like. But one of the things I do enjoy, obviously ramen is, my favorite, and tonkatsu. I'm big in the BQ gourmet range. But, people don't know that I think we have some of the best burgers in the world in Tokyo. We have some of the best pizza in the world in Tokyo. And so if you're going to be in the country for 2 weeks, it's important to experience that as well. Tokyo is the world's food capital now, not just at the Michelin star level, but even at the regular level.
Yeah. And I think Tokyo is the beginning and usually the end of everyone's trip because they fly in and out. So
Right.
you'll get people who come in the beginning, they only want to eat Japanese food. But by the time they finish their 2 week trip, they're like, no more Japanese food. Like, I want to have some Western food, right? Where are the pizza places? And in Japan, like you said, it has amazing pizza places, has great Italian places, has great Indian places, you can, and really good vegan and vegetarian food in Tokyo now. It's a little bit harder outside the big cities, but yeah, it's good. We have a nice comment here before I forget. Jermaine said from YouTube, that's so true. No amount of web research and guidebook reading will replace real local knowledge. That's true. Thank you, Jermaine.
Thank you, Jermaine. I've like literally like 100 stories just flooded my head when you said about people getting sick of Japanese food. I'm glad you brought it up because I shouldn't be, we're ambassadors for the country.
Well, we're asked. We're in Hiroshima. So usually 2 weeks after people get here, they're in Hiroshima and nobody wants to eat Japanese food. That's not true. Nobody is harsh because Hiroshima's food is famous and wonderful and everything. But I get asked a lot for non-Japanese food.
If they're there for 2 days, then they'll have okonomiyaki for one meal, right? And then they're like, okay, this is it. Unless you can really convince me that these Miyajima oysters are like, better than San Francisco, then, wait. But I've had it the other way. So I'm thinking of amazing 3 people over 73-year-olds. I won't name them because they just they've asked not to be named. But they were actually doing the trip the other way. So they ended up in Tokyo. We were initially going to do 1 day, and they just kept extending every day. I happened not to be booked. And so we ended up doing 6 days together. And on the 4th day, I told them, I'm not going to tell you what we're doing for dinner. And I took them for a burger. But of course, you've got to put the Japanese spin on it. So the beef, it was Wagyu beef, and the buns are made with Japanese flour and everything else. And as one of them was biting in to their burger, they said, Mac, you seem to know what we wanted before we knew we wanted it. None of them were going to say, oh God, I really need some American food right now.
Yeah. Well, it's funny because I'm from Hawaii originally. And when I was back in Hawaii a couple of years ago, I was overhearing some university students saying they were going to do a semester abroad in Japan. And they were really worried about gaining weight. And I was like, what? It's like the opposite. When Japanese people go to America, they're worried about gaining weight. But then I was listening, they're like, I'm going to eat tonkatsu and ramen every day, It's so funny. So definitely you can gain weight if you're traveling in Japan, if you love the rich foods. So
the best stuff.
Walk a lot.
I had my annual checkup a few years ago, and they said, okay, everything's good, but you've got a slightly high level of cholic acid. And I said, oh, why is that? And they said, because you like eating delicious food. And I said, well, hang on. I mean, I think most people have some intrinsic preference for delicious food over, I don't know what the opposite of delicious food is, non-delicious food. We all have a crap meal sometimes, right? But the desire is to generally eat delicious food. So I said, well, tell me, what is this delicious food? And then they just rattled off everything that makes life worth living, right? Ramen, tonkatsu, okonomiyaki, burgers, pizza, beer. I'm like, ugh. Anyway, all's well that ends well. I laid off my,
You should
5 bowls a
do
week.
more vegan tours. Then at least there's less cholesterol, because you have some very good vegan burger places in Tokyo,
Yeah.
which I've been to. Ripple,
Yeah.
is it Ripple,
Yeah.
and a few others? Yeah.
Which is part of the Ein Soft group, which is which does really great stuff.
Really
If
good.
anybody's watching this, then definitely head to their branch in Ginza. It's tiny, so make a reservation. But really, really great vegan and vegetarian food.
Are they doing, are restaurants open again in Tokyo, or are people doing just takeout?
No, they're pretty much open. The COVID hit, and April was basically 100% lockdown for me, and then I started taking a few walks. I started, having guided for 6 days a week in 2019. I started to worry about my legs atrophying. So
I thought to get out for walks. Yeah.
12-hour shift, and it's been interesting seeing the city change on that kind of snapshot basis. But yeah, I mean, I went for a walk a couple of days ago, and I mean, places are open now, and observing social distancing to varying degrees. My personal favorite is the one where they leave a gap in between each seat, so every other seat. Well, that's fine.
Taped
but,
up,
in a lot of places, seats are pretty tightly packed in. So that gap may be 1 seat, but, in some places it's 2 meters, and in other places it's 50 centimeters, So anyway, I mean, look, we 2 months 3 months has passed. We know a lot more about how this is transmitted. I think some basic common sense and good hygiene, people doing what they're comfortable with, on the whole, touch wood, you should be okay.
I think so. I think it is getting better, and Japan seems to be handling it really well. There aren't that many cases, so hopefully we can move forward. Let's talk a little bit about your T-shirts and apparel.
Yes. Shamelessly, I'm wearing one right now. Okay, so again, I'm just total honesty and openness about business, because I think, one thing that was helpful to me was just listening to the stories of people who built businesses, when I was starting, and we're all still learning. So, the original vision, when I founded Maction Planet, was these words, travel and apparel. they rhyme. Tours and T-shirts, there's some alliteration there for you. So, and initially my vision was that the business would be 50-50 travel and apparel. So what I did is I wanted to some Tokyo inspired T-shirts, and I'm very lucky to have some great connections with some top American comic book artists who spend a lot of time in Tokyo, and I reached out to them, and they supported me. Livio Ramondelli, whose series The Kill Lock you should all be reading right now, before it's made into some blockbuster movie. And Matt Frank, the Kaiju King, who's America's biggest Godzilla artist. I reached out to an artist, so I found online Marika, who's done designs for Uniqlo and has a huge presence in the sporting world here. And she did some super cute designs as well. And yeah, I had big plans. Those plans haven't materialized. The initial 50-50 percentage has now become 99.999% travel, and whatever the remainder is, 100 minus that apparel. But so it brings joy to my heart when once a month somebody orders a T-shirt, and I get very, very happy.
That's good. They look really cool. So this kaiju one is by Matt Frank. Is it? Is that the artist you were talking about?
Yes, it was. So that design's called the Gory Whale. Now that figure, that kaiju of the Gory Whale, the gorilla whale, is actually proprietary to us, and it's a play on the fact that the origin of Godzilla, of course, in Japanese is Gojira, and Gojira is a portmanteau of a gorilla and Kujira. So a gorilla and a whale make Gojira. And so he'd always wanted to design this kind of gorilla whale kind of spoof spin on the king of the monsters himself, Godzilla. And so it was an honor that we now own that design, and that's been one of our biggest selling t-shirts.
That's great. I love it. And I saw on the website it's just under 4,000 yen. Does that include shipping, or shipping's a little bit extra?
Shipping's a bit extra, but for listeners of this live stream, if you type in the discount code section on the Shopify, if you type Met the Founder, one word, and we'll call it a virtual meeting, then you'll get 10% off.
Nice. Are you able to ship abroad right now, or is it just Japan?
Yeah. No, we've been able to get around it. There's been some creative workarounds and printing in different places. But yeah, we can get you a t-shirt.
Nice. One of the comments I saw on TripAdvisor was that you're very good at photography, that people were really impressed and happy that you were able to, take really great pictures of them while they were on the tour. Have you had a background in photography, or you just enjoy it?
No, I'm very lucky. Some of the photography partners who I work with have given me a few lessons. So I highly recommend, if anybody is interested in learning how to shoot Tokyo better, Yayu Wang of Yayaland Studios is just absolutely unbelievable. But really, it's just come from myself. I always think about a lot of these things. People have said nice things about the photography, but all I do is just care that they have a nice photo. I mean, you know how it is. You go on holiday, you give your camera to somebody else, and somehow they've cut your head off. Or, you're stood in front of the Eiffel Tower, and somehow they've taken something that is like some intense, Time magazine portrait of your face. You're like, there's the reason why you're taking this photo here now and not, in some alley with a white wall behind me, is because I want this global landmark in the background, So it's funny what happens if you just, number one, pay attention, and number two, care about what you're doing.
Yeah.
Like the transformation in performance can be, astronomical, and people can tell. That's the thing that a lot of people don't realize. I think from a subconscious perspective, we're very wired to be able to detect whether somebody's bullshitting us or whether somebody's phoning us in, right? And so, yeah, if you really care, then people notice, and they say nice things about you, which is lovely.
Yeah, that's nice. I find recently, because I always, when I see people trying to do the selfie for more than one person, I always offer, would you like me to take your photo? And most of the time, if they're of a certain demographic or a certain age group, they'll say no, because they don't trust me in my age group and demographic to be able to take it as well as they can, which I understand. I get that. But quite often, if they do say yes, they'll say thank you. So yeah, it's taking care to get a nice frame with them and the nice background. And I think, everybody likes selfies, but probably somebody else who knows a little bit of photography could probably do a better job.
Well, the thing about the selfie, though, is often people want it, like they want the selfie. Like, wanting a bad selfie trumps wanting a phenomenal frameable photo of you, with this lovely depth of field in front of some sakura. But both is fine. So I take the photos of my guests, on some nice Japanese fridge with, all sorts of whatever it is, and then they can take the selfie as well, and everybody's happy.
Yeah. That said, you have some beautiful photos that you've taken. For example, this bee on the flower from your website. That's gorgeous.
Yeah, you know that. See, so that links to a web page. I don't know if you went to that on the website, which was I think I called it like 30 photos of the cosmos, because that was the blooming of the cosmos flowers at Shoakin and Cohen in Tachikawa, and those photos were taken with my trusty Samsung Galaxy S7 Edge, and I wanted just to show people that, you know, with a little bit of effort and attention, you can take absolutely phenomenal photos with your smartphone. And that's kind of, you know, if you notice as well with the YouTube videos I've shot, at least so far, they're all shot with this. And that's kind of all, you know, we talk about authenticity. It's a big, everybody's overusing that term now, but how can we make it a real thing? And so, you know, a lot of the photography on the website is just taken with the phone. I want people to understand that you don't need an expensive SLR or huge equipment. You also can take, you know, have this experience. You know, if you're just with somebody who can take you to the right places and kind of point your eye in the right direction.
Yeah. That said, in Japan, it is nice to have someone who knows the area and can
Yeah.
lead you to the most scenic back streets or the most interesting gardens, for example. So it's
Yeah.
kind of hard to find the best places to shoot, I find, if you're not familiar with the area.
Yes. Yeah, there are a few you know, places like it's amazing to me the gardens that show up in the guidebooks versus the gardens that I'm taking my guests to, you know, complete chalk and cheese. And you know, I'm wondering like why this isn't the place where everybody goes, for example. And often what it is that it's all very well having information, but it's how to use that information. So, you know, you have people and okay, their friend recommended a lunch spot here, you know, and then they've read somewhere that they should visit this place here, and they end up kind of zigzagging around the city without understanding that, you know, okay, they wanted to have udon, but actually there was a better udon restaurant or as good an udon restaurant right next to the garden that they were at, and everything could be done, you know, a lot better and a lot more efficiently.
Yeah. Insider knowledge is really valuable because while you're traveling, you don't have an infinite amount of time to waste a day, right?
Right. Exactly. I mean, one thing that's been interesting to me, you know, I work with some, I don't know the correct word, actually. We should all be beyond using euphemisms. But anyway, let's say, just say discerning travelers, right? So I'm very lucky to have become the go-to VIP guide for a few of the top hotels in the city and some of the, you know, platinum and black card concierge type services. So very, very honored to be in that position. And, you know, people like that, they just don't want they stare at devices all day. They just want to be on holiday without looking at their devices. So they don't want to look at Google Maps. They don't want to have to Google what the top 10 sushi places are in the city and blah, blah, blah. You know, they just want, you know, they want somebody who they trust to take care of their trip as much as possible. You know, one of the biggest compliments I've ever got was somebody said, Mac cares about your holiday possibly more than you do. And that's,
Yeah,
you know,
that's a great compliment.
yeah, people, you know, you can paraphrase it for ambassador if you want, but it's, you know, it's the passion that I want people to feel from me, you know, like I really do care. Time is the most valuable resource, right?
Yeah.
You know, more than money and more than anything else. So I'm not going to waste your time. And I don't like my time to be wasted. And
no, yeah.
You know,
yeah, I mean, if people don't think they realize it right away, but you know what could be better about their trip, right? So you know how to make their trip better, and then once they do it, they appreciate it so much. One thing I want to mention before I forget, I don't want to forget, you're doing Japan travel gift cards, which is a great way to kind of tide you over during this kind of time when travel isn't really happening. But I think, and I think you think, travel is coming back. It will come back. So if people want to invest in a gift card right now, that could really support your business during this time and, you know, give them something to look forward to, I think, as well.
it's something that I've been meaning to just put up there, people who've contacted me one-on-one saying, oh, is this something that we can do? I want to give a tour from you as a wedding gift. That option's been available, but this is kind of what I mean. It's all very well me knowing it's available. You've got to let other people know they're available. And so the last few months has given me this opportunity to kind of, do these things that have been on the to-do list. And there's been a great turn up. So hopefully late 2020 or early 2021, when people start coming in, there's already some pre-booked tours.
Nice.
Which has been nice. I mean, we've all gone through this over the last few months, right? You've decided to dedicate your efforts to, SSL, and it's been a great 6 weeks or so of that. And for me, a lot of people have been saying, oh, well, maybe you should do virtual tours. It's something I'm thinking about, but, you can just go and watch one of my YouTube videos for free if you want and enjoy, Kamed or Kokobunji or Senkakuji or
Kokobunji was great. I love that one.
Yeah, that was a fun one. And again, see, that's basically Tokyo, right? I mean, you are so close to Shinjuku, and it's completely different, vibe. That day that I spent there, idea generating with the Kokobunji Tourism Association, that there were no other foreigners in any of the spots that we went to. So, you really don't have to go into the mountains of Akita in order to get off the beaten track. You need to understand that these neighborhoods have some really A-grade tourism.
Yeah. When I was talking to Kevin Meyerson, he's in Karuizawa, and it's only an hour away, and it just looks like a whole different area. So really, from Tokyo with the Shinkansen, you can really get out to amazing places quite easily, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I've done a lot of day trips even down to Kyoto. I mean, just that distance, right? The 2.5 hours each way on the train. Okay, it's an early start and you're back a little bit later, but you can still fit in 8 or 9 hours in a destination. And as you know, the Shinkansen you can have a nap on it very easily, very comfortable. So
it's very comfortable.
It's a great base to travel from Tokyo. I think underrated still, right? A lot of people still only spend a couple of days here before going down to spend 5 days in Kyoto and Kansai. And I think people should be starting to reconfigure their trips to spend more time here.
Yeah. Chris has a nice comment, maybe one of our last. Mac is like 4 5-star hotel concierges rolled into one.
Brilliant.
But that's a good way to describe it, because a lot of people get their insider information from the hotel concierge, right? So, but a lot of people like to do self-catering or Airbnb, so you don't have access to a hotel concierge. So a guide can be like that.
Even the hotel concierges here, I'm not going to name any names because I don't want to alienate anyone, but there are some of the top hotels here. I mean, their concierge desks they're just not, some of them they're just not very good, because what happens is they send people to the safe places, the same places over and over again. I'm thinking back to some guests I had last March, and they had been booked into essentially the same type of cuisine for 3 nights in a row.
Oh no.
And that happens because people are not willing to, they're going to recommend the high end, Roppongi izakayas, rather than the fact that me and know that, pretty much any izakaya, will be better and more local and will do the job. It's I'm not such a tourism snob that I think that
cat attack. Sorry.
It's tough running the show with a cat, but some people think that we shouldn't go and see the Eiffel Tower because everybody goes to the Eiffel Tower. I disagree. You absolutely, if you come to Tokyo and Kyoto, you need to see the iconic sites, but you also need to see a lot more.
Yeah, definitely. And definitely you want to see the big sites, but I always say go before 9, go right when they open, or go 1 hour before they close. That is the key. If
Yeah.
you're going to avoid the crowds, and definitely please do avoid the crowds because nobody likes crowds. But now that we're going forward from coronavirus, that's not possible. There will be no chance to have crowds. Hopefully, sustainable
Yeah.
tourism, staggering entry will become the norm, right? So it could
So,
be a lot better.
what I'm hoping from the aftermath of this crisis is, I mean, sustainability, you touched on it at the start, means different things to different people. The way I tried to bring sustainability into what we do at Maction Planet is, number one, you're going to be going into those neighborhoods and supporting the local people. I think often people think it's all about not using plastic, and with the great work being done by people at My Mizu,
Yeah.
we're big subscribers to that philosophy as well.
It's
But
wide, right? It
yeah,
touches on a variety of stuff. So what you're doing to get people to spend money in local areas to meet locals, that's
yeah,
already very sustainable, much more than going on a tour bus and only shopping at Don Quixote or Daiso. I mean, you're really doing a great service to sustainable tourism. So thank you for that.
yeah. No, my pleasure. And it's going to continue. I think people are going to be much more switched onto it
Yeah.
after in the aftermath of Corona.
I think so. On that note, we have reached our hour. Thank you so much, Mac. A pleasure talking to you. And I would love to reconnect in a couple months' time as we
Sure.
adjust and things change and tourism starts again. I think that would
Yeah,
be a really interesting time to talk again. So
absolutely.
let's do it.
Japan has got away relatively unscathed by the virus. Just like we don't know how people here are not overweight, given they all eat ramen and tonkatsu. We don't quite know why that is the case, but I think it bodes well. So please, Japan is waiting. As soon as those flights restart, please come and join us, and Tokyo and the country are here for you.
Yeah, I think one thing you said in the podcast, which I'd like to touch on, is I think air travel, and I think this is something you said, air travel will be more expensive, and
Yeah,
we will have to plan our trips carefully, and
yeah,
have more value on travel, and that's not a bad thing. That's a good thing
no,
because
yeah,
people won't do quick trips across the world. They will plan and prepare and really invest in the trip. And for coming to Japan, that's a great option.
yeah. And you're going to see that both across business travel, which is a business trip is now going to have to really mean something
Yeah.
that you can't do over a video call, and it's going to mean the same thing for personal travel. So people, I think, are going to spend longer here. That's a great opportunity for some of the regions around the country, and they're going to be doing more meaningful experiences. So that's a great opportunity for people who are trying to keep our local crafts alive.
Definitely. Thank you all so much for tuning in today. And thank you so much, Mac, for joining and giving us all of your amazing insights. Thank you for all you do with taking people off the beaten path and making tours personal and meaningful. And keep up the good work.
Thank you very much.
Thank
Okay,
you. Have a good
signing
day,
out.
everyone. Bye.